Good morning, friends. My name is Gary McSweeney, and I get to give service not very often. But today's my card came up. I actually volunteered because it's a big historic weekend at Ananda. It's Swami's Moksha Mandir dedication. Swamiji passed away a little bit over 2 years ago, and this weekend they're dedicating where his body will be laid, and it will be a beautiful place to meditate up at Nevada City at the village. And I invite all of you to get a chance to go up there and meditate. A quick aside, I was never drawn to meditate where Yogananda's body is. He's interred at Forest Lawn. And there's a story of some of his disciples who went there after he had left the body, and they were crying and mourning and feeling the separation. And he appeared to one of the disciples and whispered in her ear, "I'm not in there." So that was my reason for feeling like, well, if he didn't feel like he was there, why would I go to Forest Lawn? But we did a pilgrimage to Southern California once, and that was part of the itinerary. And the vibrations there are very, very powerful. So these saints, like Swamiji, their bodies retain some of the spiritual legacy. And that ties into a little bit of what David was telling us this morning. He was up there yesterday, and it's really probably the biggest weekend in Ananda's history as far as people. And people have come from India, Europe, a lot of the leaders, and it sounds like a very special time. David compared it to a Kumbh Mela for Ananda, where all the people come. So, attunement, Martha and Mary. I started preparing for this talk, and I was all concentrating on action versus meditation. But if you look at Swami's life, and the question has come up, what is Swamiji's legacy? What was his main thing? He did World Brotherhood colonies. He started Education for Life schools, which is keeping quite a few of us very busy, just with that one little aspect. He did a music ministry. He did many, many things. Just an unbelievable amount of creative energy flowed through him. But really I think his legacy truly is discipleship. The example he set of one-pointed devotion to Yogananda. And whenever he would speak to us, he would concentrate on that part. And whenever Master would speak to disciples, he would concentrate on that part. So I've gathered up a couple stories, parables, I guess you would call them, about the fragility of attunement, about the challenges that we face as spiritual seekers facing attunement. First one, Yogananda had a very advanced disciple, and he didn't live on the coast. He didn't live with Master in the ashram. He lived some other part of the United States. And the story was that Yogananda was encouraging him to come to visit more. He said, "You really should come out to the coast and visit more." For whatever reason, he couldn't. Different versions. One is he's in samadhi. So if you're in samadhi in some state, why, you get into that world of, well, I don't need to go to be with the Master if I'm already in samadhi. The Master said in a public lecture afterwards, he said, there's something off there. And he's already beginning to realize it, but he can't figure out what it is. But even someone as highly advanced as that can fall out of tune. There's another interesting story that somebody told me once recently. I'd never heard this one before. There was a disciple of Master, and he liked to go around barefoot. Seems like a pretty mild thing. But Yogananda used to tell him, "You should wear shoes." And the disciple thought, well, perhaps. He thought, you can tell me about Kriya, you can tell me about meditation, but I think I can decide about whether I wear shoes or not. So the disciple caught a disease through his feet, and it ended up killing him. He died from it. So someone went to Yogananda and said, what do we make of this? He said, even in the little things, you need to be in tune with the Guru. So now these stories are getting closer to home as I go. The last two are about me. There was a period in Ananda's history where the media was kind of stirring the pot and attacking Swami and trying to get some dirt on Swami. So they found this person, whom I happen to know, and they interviewed him, and this article showed up in the local paper. And they said, so what is this terrible thing that Swami did? So he told this story that one time he was working with Swami, and Swami said, we need to buy some software. And I want to buy this special type of software that transposes music. I don't know many of the details. And that's what I think we should do. Well, this fellow looked into it, and he said, from what I'm finding out, it's overpriced, it's about to be outdated, and it's really difficult to work with. So we shouldn't buy it. And Swami listened to him and then said, we should buy the software. And he said something like, I don't think you understood what I was saying. It's overpriced, it's going to be outdated real soon, and it's really hard to work with. And on that point, they had a falling out. Swami went ahead, they got the software. I didn't know what to make of that story. I just thought, it just didn't seem to make a whole lot of sense, but it really bothered this guy so much that he ended up leaving Ananda over it and other things. But that was kind of the breaking point. That was the crux of it. This story came out about 15 years after the actual event. So let's just say he was holding on to it. So months later, I'm sitting in David and Asha's living room, and Asha's sharing with us in a satsang about how Swami worked with people and how he was kind of super conscious how he worked with people. He worked with people on an energy level. And she was telling the story of one member who was having a really difficult time in life. I know this member also. And people were going to Swami, is there anything we can do to help him? We really need to help this person. He's having a really hard time. So Swami thought, okay. He didn't say it. He didn't come out and say, well, this is what I'm going to do. This is how He invited this person over to the Crystal Hermitage to help out transpose the music. And in order to do it, they needed a program. This man is brilliant. He's brilliant in both music and computers. This software package, which he had to work with a lot, kept him in the vibration of Crystal Hermitage a lot. So the point of that story is that here's Swami from a superconscious level is trying to help this one person. One person is so caught in his own world, and I hate to admit it, but I can relate to both people in this story. I can relate to the guy like, no, this isn't efficient. This isn't a good use of our money. We shouldn't be doing this, sir. Don't you understand? I really did my research. I really know what I'm talking about. Swami's not having any of it. He's trying to help this one person, and the person came, and he was so brilliant with computers and music, it helped him. Swami wasn't so interested in the software package. He was interested in helping people. He always put people first. Now for the more personal stories. We did our school play this year about George Washington Carver, and I kind of, for me, stepped up a little bit, and I said, I'll write the script. I've never written a script before in my life. And it was a lot of fun, and I try to meditate with Swami because Swami would talk about the writing process, and I try to tune into the way he would write. So I wrote this script, and we help, all the teachers help with the slideshows and the tech and everything. We had this idea that we would have a giant screen up here and that the backdrop of each scene would be digital. It would be just a projector projecting an image. And I just thought that would be fun and creative. And because he's a historical figure, George Washington Carver, you can get pictures of his home and all these things, so it really worked well. So all during the rehearsals, everything worked beautifully. And then it came the day of our first performance. And it started off poorly. There was a big battle scene right in the beginning of the play, and there are these 2 rows of children right on these steps, and it's supposed to be a Civil War battle. And they go up there and they stand like this. And just then the music is supposed to cue. So Craig presses play, and the music is playing on the computer, but we're not hearing anything. So I immediately look over, and it's on in iTunes. The music is up, the volume's up. I look over at the soundboard. Helen has both channels up, the mute's off, but we're not getting any sound. It took us a while to fix it. Estimates of how long it took us range from 90 seconds to 1 hour. Because when you're standing there in front of an audience like this, 90 seconds feels like an hour. Finally, I remembered, oh, that's right, sometimes people turn the volume down on the computer, not in iTunes. I said, I remember, I know how to do it. I know what's wrong, the sound on the computer is off. And Craig turned to me and goes, great, how do you fix it? And I'm like, I don't remember that part of it. But luckily, Vinny was standing there. It takes a team, and Vinny came over and pressed the button, boom, 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 and sound came up, and the children. And it was a magical moment because the kids were holding it for 90 seconds, which is an eternity. Well, that just started it. The tech was going crazy. My computer was glowing. I don't know what was going on. The slides weren't operating. Nothing was working right. I had the wrong slides up at the wrong time. I was getting just an inner frantic turmoil. For some reason, that's like really hits my nerve when things like that happen, and particularly when I'm in charge of making those things happen. I believe, this isn't an exaggeration, I believe we had, during a beautiful little cute young children's corn dance, I believe I had a KKK picture up that was supposed to be meant for later. It was really just crazy. And I'm freaking out back there, and I've completely lost my center. And finally, I just go, okay, that's it. I just close the computer. And my heart sank. I just thought, oh God, I'm letting down the kids, and we worked so hard on this, blah, blah, blah. Erica said later, how come it always waits till the first performance? Why doesn't it happen in rehearsal? It's the gremlins. I don't know, just gremlins attack tech on big events. So I close the computer and I just go, no more slides, we'll work on it, I'll fix it after the play. But then immediately I thought of Swami. And I thought, what would Swami say? Oh, that's good, Gary. Yeah, you just quit. That's good. Just take it easy. Don't sweat it. No. Swami would say, just keep going. Yes, the wrong slide is up there, but just keep putting out energy. So in that instant, I thought, aha, because I had tried everything. I was pressing the remote. It was just trying everything that I knew to fix the glitches. Then I'm like, wait a second. If I turn off the power strip, which is back there, I just reboot the whole system. So I did it, and then I freaked out because I thought I was going to turn off Erica's slideshow, but I didn't. It came up, a few slides were wrong, the rest of the show was seamless. In fact, that was just the first of 4 shows, and the 4 other shows were basically seamless. And it was that moment of attunement with Swami and not giving up, and I felt so, even if the slides hadn't worked, I felt like I had really passed a test for me, to not give up in that moment and to be expansive. Now, the other story I'm going to share with you is, it's from the celebration we had here when Swamiji, April, what date did he leave the body? April 21st. So we had a beautiful ceremony here, and we had meditation and chanting, and Asha spoke. And then there were 3 altars set up. First one was for devotion, another one for willingness, and another one for moksha, liberation. So for the devotion one, people came up and sprinkled rose petals on the picture of Swami and Master. For willingness, they put pieces of rice. And for moksha, for liberation, they had balloons taped, helium-filled balloons taped to the marble. And each person would go up, sprinkle rose leaves, rose petals, a little bit of rice, and then tear off the tape and let the balloon fly up. It was really sweet and beautiful. The space I was in that night, I couldn't bring myself to leave my chair and go up. I was just kind of enjoying where I was back there. And by the time I was ready, all the balloons were up. So I said, okay. So I said my prayers to Swami. Next morning, I can't sleep. I come in really early. And instead of meditating at home or in the temple in the community, I came here. And I walk in this door. I move keyboards on Wednesdays. We set up our music program in the back, so I used that as kind of my excuse, but I was really here to meditate on the altar. So I walk in, all the balloons have come down, the helium, and most of them are just resting on the carpet, but a few of them are just about this height. They're just suspended in midair. It was so trippy, I guess you would say, we used to say. And I just had this moment, and then I had this thought, and I thought, wow, everyone's aspirations are so high, but you know what? The balloons come down to earth. And then I thought again, how would Swami feel about that thought? What is the great point of having a thought like that? Why not just concentrate on the positive? So I tried to change my energy, and I meditated, and I had this great meditation. And then while I was moving keyboards, some really interesting thing, and I was really trying to keep my energy up, I look over, and one of the helium balloons on the ground is soaring to the roof. I'm like, it must have got caught in the heat vent. The air is coming up from the floor vent. Then I come out here, and another one is soaring up while I'm watching it. Just like, is Swami communicating with me? Like, is he saying it's better to have a positive attitude than to be negative and to be naysaying? So I'm moving keyboards, and I open up the door, and I guess the draft sucks some of the balloons out. So as I'm going down to the basement, one of the balloons is wrapped around the trikes that the children play on. And so I thought, oh, that's nice. That'll be a reminder all day today of keep an expansive view. Then I look up, and one is soaring over the school up into the sky. Just like, this is really getting, trippy. I went for morning walk with the middle schoolers, and I'm just walking along, and there's one that had landed and wrapped itself in a bush out, in the neighborhood. So that one is still on the altar in the middle school, and it's still holding its air. I just thought, this is amazing. I just have to commune more with the divine. It's hard. The spiritual, the world is always trying to kind of like, nah, just be practical. No, it doesn't really work that way. The divine is just, the God is with us all the time in every situation. So I'm doing takedown of the keyboards. This is later in the day. I've moved those keyboards, I figured out. We've been in the new building about 5 years. I've moved them about 150 times. I've never had a class come up to me en masse and insist that they help move the keyboards, take them down. But this day they did. What was interesting was the playmakers, the kindergarten students. So they came up to me with full enthusiasm. Can we help move the keyboards? And I said, of course you can. Of course we can move the keyboard. How do 4.5-year-old people move keyboard? It was crazy, they'll break. But I bring them in here, and what do they see? They see all the balloons. They go crazy. They're running around. They're laughing. They're playing. They're having a great time. I said, that's great. Enjoy it. Then I invited them. I said, okay, you guys, but you said you were going to help me with the keyboards. Will you help? And they actually did. And then they said, will you give us a balloon? So I said, well, of course, And again, if you give one child a balloon at that age, you have to give everybody a balloon. You have to make sure you have enough. Anyway, we handed out the balloons, and all day long the children were running around with these balloons, which was particularly meaning to me because of my attitude and because of my attempt to try to attune myself with Swamiji. So we as devotees, Swamiji is no longer with us. I never met Master. But through meditation and through divine attuning ourselves of the divine will, we can make progress. And one of the interesting things about attunement, because even if the really high souls can fall out of tune, how does it happen? Well, it happens usually just 1 degree at a time. You just start like this, and you go, and next thing you know, you're facing the wrong direction. And when you're in tune, it's always expansive, even when you're even when you're in the midst of a big test. So I've seen people, a friend of mine came back from the village recently and was just saying how wonderful one of the devotees up there looks. She's never seen him look so happy and just so clear. I happen to know the last 4 years of his life has been an absolute hell. Health issues, business issues, failed projects. He's been through the ringer. But he just keeps going, and he just keeps trying. And one way you know that you're in tune is you're expansive, you're not defensive, you're not negative, and that you just can face it with courage. When you're out of tune, you're oftentimes defensive, you're rationalizing things, and you're just it's contractive. It's just as clear as that. It's just contractive. And when we look at Swami's example of his life, in every facet, he was just so expansive. I mean, his chest just used to show it. He used to walk into a room, and he would just fill up the room with light and love. And all of us can tune in to that and get it, to be in tune, which is the goal. Thank you.